Yep, started.
Okay, can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, so good evening, everyone. This is IFLA APR PPP Cross Talk number 2. And tonight we have special guests from the Palau, led by Javier Matsutaro-san. And Kiyohito Tamotsu, who is the representative for Landscape Architects Without Border at IFLA APR PPP. And also today, we are very excited to have Shoko Takemoto from World Bank as a commentator. And let me explain a little bit background about this IFLA APR PPP Crosstalk. IFLA APR means International Federation of Landscape Architects, and PPP is a professional practice and policies. So we have many countries within Asia Pacific region. Some countries only have a few landscape architects, but I think we would like to enhance the connection and network, and we hope that this talk will become sort of the platform for the new connection. And today, so the last time we talked about the green infrastructure with the special guest, and this time is from Landscape Architects Without Border, Kyo, or prepared for this talk session. And next session will be held in next month, and that will be emerging young professional. And after next session will be agriculture and food. And it's not, the date is not fixed yet, but we will definitely let you know when this crosstalk will be held. So I would like to pass my part to Kyo from now on, but tonight's topic is a voice from Tomodachi, Action for Sea Level Rise. So Kyo, could you start explaining the purpose of tonight's crosstalk, and would you like to start facilitating?
Yep. Thank you very much, Tak, and I will share my screen. Oh. Tak, sorry. Could you allow me to share my screen?
Oh, okay, hold on.
Yep.
Yep. Now you should be able to do that.
Okay, can you see my screen? Yep.
Yes.
Oh, thank you. Good evening, everyone. My name is Kiyohito Tamotsu, landscape architect and a board member of JLU. And I'm a newly appointed chair of a landscape architect with a border team in IFLA Asia Pacific region, Tak mentioned before. And tonight I would like to talk about sea level rise with one of the Tomodachi countries, which we call as non-member countries in IFLA APR region. This is the second part of a PPP crosstalk coordinated by Tak. And actually,
Takano-san.
oh yes. Chigusaki-san. Yeah, Takano-san is here.
I'm sorry.
It's okay. The Tomodachi project started with Mr. Takano. He's an immediate past president of IFLA APR, and he unfortunately passed away just a month ago. I and Miki and Chio Yoshikai from JLU worked with him closely to approach non-member countries. I think Miki is also present tonight, I think. Could you show your face to everyone and say hi to everyone, please?
Yes.
Miki?
Yes,
Hi.
hello, I'm Miki.
Hi.
Hi, Kyo.
Thank you. Thank you, Miki. We are landscape architects with a border team now, and we will carry on his will and legacy. Actually, in honor of his life, I'd like to ask you to join us in a moment of silence for him. Please close your eyes for a moment of reflection of respect to him. Okay? Thank you all. Thank you. Actually, Tomodachi project is his well. It is time to make more friends, to share our landscape knowledge and nature-based solutions for climate change issues. So that's why we started to approach other countries. Like we approached 29 countries that are not our members yet, and 10 countries gave us positive responses. So Republic of Palau is one of the countries we approached, and we met Mr. Abai, today's speaker from Republic of Palau. And he will share the information on what is going on in Palau with sea level rise issues. And Ms. Shoko Takemoto from World Bank Tokyo will be our commentator. Tonight, I will also be a speaker tonight as a landscape architect. Actually, I'm from Amami Island in Kyushu. Actually, Amami is here. You know, you can see the Taiwan and Philippines and Indonesia and Malaysia here. I'm like Mr. Abai as an islander. You know, I'm a Shimanchu in Japanese, yeah. And I want to introduce one of my landscape projects as I face the crisis of sea level rise. I can share the common issues in a sense with Mr. Abai and other landscape architects. There is a Kyushu Palau Ridge, which connects Japan and Palau. It is an area sandwiched between the Philippine sea plates and prone to large earthquakes. I think we got earthquake, right? Just a minute ago, right? Unfortunate. So tsunami and typhoons are frequent in this region, and it is an area that suffers tremendous damage due to the climate change and rising sea level. So obviously, we're living with disasters, typhoons, earthquake, tsunami, heavy rain, and heat. After our presentation, we will discuss our challenge later. Before introducing my project, it will be good to know the fact regarding sea level rise, I think. This fact is from Ocean Summit in New York 2017. So this data should have been updated this year, I think. So 600 million people live in a coastal area that are less than 10 meters above sea level. I think Shoko knows more, and Mr. Abai too. Some scenarios said that approximately 0.5 to 0.9 meter rise by 2100. So 80 years later, if maybe 1 meter sea level rise happens, and when it's happened, 37 million people may displace in East Asia. This story is about East Asia, so not included Pacific Islands. So we're maybe more than that, more than 40 million people are at the risk, I think. So the crisis regarding sea level rise is getting worse every year caused by climate change. And we are not sure what will happen in the future, but we know nature seawalls, you know, the coral reef, actually. Coral reef are damaged already, and some coral reefs is gone. So the height of waves will rise, rise no matter how the sea level rises. So we are already got, you know, the wave, you know, height wave actually. We all know the nature-based solution should be operated to the coastal lines as soon as possible. What we can do as a landscape architect is to plant the mangroves here, right? As the United Nations suggested. We need a healthy coral reef, of course, for the reducing the power of the wave. And it will be good to plant mangroves for the second seawalls to weaken the waves more. Mangroves will be good for subtropics to grow. but that is not an adapted solution for all countries. So it is essential to think about what kind of species are suitable for preventing the coastline in each region. The mangroves are okay for the Southeast Asia region, but not in Tokyo or Hokkaido. So my island is in Japan, located in the subtropics, so it is easy to plant mangroves, but the mangroves need time to grow up. So we need another planting with mangroves to prevent the coastline. I will explain later what I choose. I think the oyster project is very famous in Boston, Massachusetts, are pretty famous, right? And nature-based solutions for such a northern countries, I think. So if we are now landscape architects, please ask us to find out what kind of species are functional for your protecting the coastline protecting. So we need a healthy coral reef still to reduce the power of the wave. And it will be good to plant mangroves for their second seawalls, right? And actually, a couple of months ago, Atami, Shizuoka, 100 kilometers from Tokyo, got a heavy rain and had a landsliding disaster. As you can see, the mud from the hill to the sea, that damaged the marine ecosystems by landsliding, unfortunately. It tells about we need to look into the both coastline and the landscape behind to think about sea levelizing with climate change. We got heavy rain on the mountain and the mud sliding goes to the ocean and the coral reef will be dead and we lose nature-based walls, right? Yeah. And let's get back to my island. Amami Island is located in the northern limits of the subtropics. The population is 100,000 and the size of the island is 700. I think Palau is a double, half size, right? Half size of my island, and maybe the population is double. So Amami is not dense city. So 2.5 hours from Tokyo by airplanes, and the disasters are frankly affected by earthquakes and typhoons because of the Kyushu Palau Ridge. Amami has been registered as World Heritage this year, and the designated area cannot be overdeveloped, but you can develop these two red spots area actually. So my project started 15 years ago and located this one of this area. The number of accommodation facility in this area has more than doubled compared to 15 years ago, and overseas investment has also increased. Actually, my friend in Singapore, he invested a lot of money to build the villas. I think, yeah, actually, he's my friend. So, but they cut the mountains, built the roads, and they continue to build the hotels on the seawalls. Yeah, it seems that we should stop, but it's unstoppable because of economy. We need to see the fact again regarding the island economy. 50%, oh sorry, 50% of our international tourists travel coast area. In some developing countries, tourism accounts for over 25% of GDP. It is not exceptional for my island. We rely on the economy of tourism, maybe 50%. Yeah, we rely on the economy of tourism. The development is good for the islands, but we sometimes do not look into the coming crisis, sea level rise with climate change. So without knowing the landscape design for the coastline and the landscape behind, there is a risk, always a risk of losing your investment, and investment will in the bank, I think. I will show the typical section of a development site in those less spots. When hotels rose along the coastline built, the existing coastal ecosystem chains are broken and devastated. When developers create resort there, erosion gets worse. The waves come here, and erosion starts all the time if no cure. Probably a phenomena, especially the erosion problems that is happening on every island in the world. I won't talk about it without Mr. Abai Shoko and talk later. I found the pandanus victoria's trees, but you can't find it in my island. Just tree, actually the pandanus victoria's trees are symbol tree of Amami Island and is suitable for tide and wind protection, but trees were cut down by such a development. That is why the erosion made the land soil flow. Coral reefs began to breach because mud goes to the ocean, as I said. Coconut crabs here, coconut crab, her endangered species right now, and he disappeared. And the sea turtles lost their birthplace at the beach. It was 15 years ago. My project is a notorious result development. My project's a result, and it sounds very bad. But I focus, however, I focus on reducing the pressure and solving the current problems, such as erosion by landscape design. This is an aerial photo from above of the site by Google. Isn't it a great view? This is the Pacific Ocean, and my project is here, and the Japanese Sea behind. I had designed these villas project and the landscapes 15 years ago before Amami became a World Heritage Site. Actually, my project's monitor index was sea turtles, right? And these are villas, not here. Actually, I breed architecture in the ground. Actually, there are many environmental groups that protect sea turtles' birthplace, and I promised them to protect their sea turtles' place during my project. If they get mad, if sea turtles gone, my project will be unsuccessful, and it was a very big challenge for me. The resort villa is now in its 15th year and covered with pandanus victorias, like here, in front of the villa, victorious forest here, and the morning glory in front of it. But you can see the seawalls here. There's nothing. And behind the villa, there's another development start, and the mountains behind. Yeah, like here. Okay. Actually, it's covered. My architecture is not visible from the road, the shared view. Actually, my guests understand well my concept and the island's environmental situation, and still constantly stay there to experience the beautiful coastal landscape. Actually, coconut crabs are beginning to be discovered. Here, thanks to the pandanus victorias, so the coconut crabs came back, and actually these trees are symbol trees and icons of Amami Island, and he's a Japanese painter. His name is Tanaka Isun, and he drew the landscape paintings of Amami Island. Actually, he's originally from Greater Tokyo, but he moved to Amami Island, and he spent his lifetime to draw Amami landscape. He loves the pandanus victorious, and I want to restore the original Amami landscape scenery with the tree he loved. And this is the beginning of. I started to plant the trees before building the villa at the site. I took this picture last week and immature and made a tunnel for approaches, you know, from the beach to villa, like Victoria's Forest. This is a view from the beach. Luckily, we can still see the sea turtles here. It's a secret, but somewhere here. Every year they came back. She came back. Environmental groups are happy about it, and so am I. Before the development, erosion was very severe. It used to be like this, and the land was abandoned like that, nothing and at the site. As I mentioned, the mud from the ground will pollute the ocean. So if you dive into the ocean 15 years ago, you can easily see this bleached coral reef and also dead coral reefs on the beach. We planted the pandanus texturias to revive the ecosystem at the coastline biodiversity in terms of ecotone. So as I said earlier, the coconut clubs came back and the sea turtles continue to lay their eggs. Yep, and the bleached coral reef on the beach. And actually, the bleached coral leaf is unstoppable because of the climate change. I cannot stop the climate change, unfortunately. I found a bunch of dead coral reefs on the beach, so I used that the leaves as a recycled materials for the retaining wall, mulching, and the pavements. And it's good for use for stucco for the paint wall. And actually, coral leaves are suitable. A dead one. Dead coral leaves are suitable for insulated outdoor heat. They are used for humidity control as well indoors. So nowadays, the coral reefs recycle industry is growing, and architecture like the box culvert. This is a box culvert architecture design, and it's kind of can be used as large earth retaining wall, like to prevent erosion until the pandanus victorious grows. So visitors of Beta turn off the lights at night and they enjoy the sound of waves in their room at the deck and starry sky, very quiet with the creatures without making noise, so very relaxed. A typical coastal nature-based solution is mangrove planting, like UN suggested, but mangroves take decades to grow up. So I want to suggest fast growing local plants and use the architecture of the seawalls at the same time. It's a hybrid solutions, I think. We need the architecture to bring the money and to maintain the coastline actually. So I use the money for maintain the coastline. So also the visitors will be aware of how they contribute to the island's ecosystems and the sea level rise issues. So there is another issues come up recently caused by climate change. Every year, the mountain behind my villa is also collapsed. Although it is affected by heavy rains and typhoon, but it's not exaggeration to say that this has happened due to heavy development. The back mountain collapse and the laws of cut off like this, like Shizuoka situations. Atami situation. I made the alliance to maintain the hill. At the back, we start to make contract with a nursery on the mountains to manage the landsliding risk at the back of villa. I also use the nursery plants, which are local, of course, to maintain the coastline to landscape. So we plant the nursery, the trees from nursery to the plant coastline. So this is kind of circular local economy to protect the erosion at the coastline management and also mountain management, I think. Development along natural World Heritage Site is unstoppable, but I'm now trying to outreach the landscape methods to other projects, architect project and developers project. And the typical buildings along the coastline, they're built on the seawalls like these. Actually, great architects design in Japan those architecture, but without landscape strategies. I approach those building architects and other stakeholders to plant panels victorious in front of them. And well, as you know, the architecture has a limit of its life. Actually, maybe 20 years later, this architecture is useless, maybe. And but even if architecture is gone, the place will be restored and green easily because the vegetation sandwiches the place architecture used to be. Also, the landscape will remain as it was, which is very good. Actually, the massive seawalls here have begun to build in the Tohoku. They add 2 meters more on the existing seawalls, and they get 8 meters high from sea level. So tall seawalls are started built on my island because of that tragedy of Tohoku earthquake. It's very new to everyone's memory. I don't think my activities are comparable to the post-earthquake reconstruction of the magnitude. It may be very tiny. My activity is very tiny and useless for the decision makers, like a politician. But I still think it's a great way to get started because anyone can do it. Just stick trees on the beach. And if you can do a plant coral reef. Actually, the kids group are now trying to plant coral reef to restore nature-based seawalls in front of my villa. So we have many tomodachi to work with to protect our coastline. And also there's some groups on the islands plant species that stop the erosion and maintain the forest in the mountain. I think it's too late after things happen because it's happened. The sea level rise happened and it is already happened. But I hope that there is an alternative solutions to challenge the sea level rise with landscape, with us, with landscape architect. This is my message to all stakeholders regarding sea level rise. It is very small landscape actions, but it related to the big solution, I believe. So thank you very much for my presentation. Thank you for patience. Next speaker, Abai Matsutaro from the Republic of Palau. Let's find out what we can do for Tomodachi. Please welcome Mr. Abai. Thank you. Thank you, Tak. Yeah, you can go on. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Kyo-san.
Thank you.
Very insightful presentation. So just a little bit of a heads up. I'm at a building surrounded by a neighborhood and people returned home from work. So if you hear kids around, I really do apologize. We're not, our walls are not as very insulated. So hopefully it's not too much of a distraction. And the other thing is, I do have a tendency to be succinct and straight to the point. So I'll try my best to meet the 30-minute mark, but apologies if I finish early. I hope that's okay. The important thing is that you get the pertinent information and maybe give you some insights to the issues that are common between our two islands, but perhaps also unique from our respective islands as well. So with that, if I may share my my presentation. Let me see. There you go. Do you guys see the presentation? Okay,
Yes.
great. Then there you go. Okay. So I understand this webinar was about sea level rise, but from our experience, it's really not just sea level rise, but it's a combination of different factors. They often don't happen in silo, that sometimes that they actually happen in relationship to the different indicators. And so yes, sea level rise will be covered here, but in the context of issues with inundation, sometimes it has other compounding environmental factors that that makes the sea level rise impact worse. And that's kind of the gist of this presentation. So just recently we did a climate assessment for Palau that was just published last year, end of last year. And it was really tailored for resource managers and policymakers, and really highlighting the key climate indicators that are of concern. And we need to start planning and creating actions to have some adaptation measures put in place to, at the very least, cope better with the challenges, but hopefully in the long term build resilience. And the first indicator is really just because of the rising global temperatures that we're seeing a pattern of increased air temperature throughout Palau. Also, we examined the storm events, whether the storms are stronger and whether or not they are more frequent. This is specific also for Palau. In other regions, they might have different, for example, levels of frequency. Ocean changes, that comes with warmer air temperature and increased CO2 that gets absorbed into the ocean system. And then for us, the other factor that we need to consider is increased rainfall overall. And then last, we will then cover some of the issues that we're facing, that we're faced with when it comes to sea level rise, and with some photo evidences of it. Okay, so this is what we found. There are more hot days and less cooler nights. The projection, the data demonstrates that it's going to continue on the same trajectory, and overall the average temperature will continue to rise. And this is just a data to show the trend since 1952, essentially when we started measuring heat temperatures around Palau. And this is just to show that on average, the nights are getting warmer. And then the overall trend, this is just to show, to highlight what we've seen on the data. For typhoons and storms, we haven't seen increased frequency and intensity necessarily. Although with the projections that we've done, we're seeing that when it does happen, it will be of higher intensity. What is still in question is whether the frequency will be more frequent. And there is a perception by many of the people here. Back in 2012, we received 2 typhoons back to back within a 10-month time span, which is a lot for us. We haven't experienced that in record history since we started monitoring typhoons. But the public perception, because it was so severe, both typhoons were so severe, that there is this tendency for people to think that there is actually more frequency of typhoons, where actually the data shows that right now it's unclear. And this is the devastating effect of what a typhoon could have. So back in 2012, there was a big typhoon. 10 months later, in November of 2013, another typhoon hit. And this is in the island, the state of Kayang, the northernmost island in Palau. To the left, if you see this area right here, this is a taro area. It's one of the main crop that people use as a source of starch. That area was fully inundated, and they were fortunate enough that the tide was low, because even though the tide was low, the wind and the heavy waves literally came from this end of the island and flowed all the way through to the other end. So afterwards, about 2 weeks later, you can still see a little bit of greenery. It became kind of a bit of a desert island. And to this day, it's still recovering. These taro patches, as of about last year, start to grow back. So in a span of almost 10 years, this thing was essentially non-usable. So people had to bring in rice as a starch substitute to have on the island. Okay, so with that, next slide. The other thing is ocean changes. With global warming, we're experiencing higher temperature for the ocean, and what comes with that is accumulated heat stress. And with increased CO2 into the ocean, we're experiencing ocean acidification. And the projections onto the future is that it's only going to continue on. And that's of a big concern. In terms of the coral reefs, yes, there's the factor of sea level rise, but the coral reef also acts as a natural barrier from oceans. So when you have this slow onset of sea level rise, compounded by, for example, if we have a strong weather event, you have one less natural barrier to protect the residents that are living in the coastal area. So that's what I mean about the compounding factors is often enough, it's not just the sea level rise as an issue, but often it becomes worse because of another environmental factor that's associated with climate change. Also, the average rainfall is projected to increase, and extreme rainfall frequency is also projected to increase. This is just to show you the data to support what has changed so far, that it's been pretty much the same. But the concern is that it's going to be, again, another additional compounding factor for those that live in the bottom of a slopey hill, and also are next to the ocean. And I'll get into that in a moment when we get to the pictures. Another misperception in Palau is the droughts. When it's El Nino season, we do get these severe droughts, but it looks like with the projections, it's going to be less of a factor. That it's going to be more about water management and making sure that flooding occurrences can be minimized. Okay, and then really at the heart of this webinar is the sea level. This is just to show that it's going to increase. What we're seeing on the data is that the frequency of tide levels that will cause inundation is more and more. This year alone, we've had 1, 2, 3 instances already where coastal areas are flooded. And these are just some of the scenarios that we're looking onwards. So as Kyo had mentioned, 2.5 meters. Statistically speaking, the chances are small, but nevertheless scientifically possible. And this is the main kind of metropolitan area in Palau, to which on the next slide you will see a map of where we developed inundation map. And I just wanted to point out that a lot of these villages are right on the edge, if not within mangrove areas. And you will see on the map how this could be an issue. So with the 2.5 meter projection, essentially this is a popular dock. It's called T-Dock. A lot of it will be inundated here. Villages along here will be, actually are already being inundated. We have photo evidence of that. This is our only national hospital, which is of particular risk because it is connected to a very thin bridge. So if anything should happen to here, the utility lines are also connected here. If anything should happen here, say a big stormy weather event happens, people would be disconnected by basically our only national hospital. Our national hospital is also prone to inundation. It's only about, sorry, I don't know, our metric system is a little bit different here, but it's only about 6 feet high. So at 2.5 5 meters, that's about 8 feet. So it's already pretty vulnerable to sea level. So we're looking to relocate this hospital here. This right here is our national port, which is also at risk of inundation. This is our national port right here. These are residential areas. So this is just to demonstrate that we really need to start looking into moving inwards and putting in place zoning ordinances to make it so to disincentivize people from living and building too close to the coast or to the water. And this is a photo of T-Rock. How do I get back? T-Rock is this area right here. And this area right here, it's a historical site. Right in front, you can't really see in this photo, but right in front of this vehicle is a swimming pool that was built by the Japanese government. And so I remember growing up as kids, we would swim here. There's plans to rehabilitate the area, but then there's concern that whether it's worth the investment, considering that the level of inundation that's already occurring. This right here is supposed to be the edge of the dock, and the inundation goes pretty much all the way over half of this parking area. And you can't see here, but the water literally comes into the swimming pool and then over the other side. This is a residential area. And this is an area on the bottom of a hill, a steep slope, and in an area that used to be a mangrove system. And this is basically the person's backyard. And in their backyard, they have an outdoor kitchen, and this is their bathroom. The water literally comes up. This house is up on stilts, so the water is maybe about 2 inches lower than 2 inches. The floor is 2 inches higher than the water at this point. But residences such as these really need to, we need to figure out a way to support them so that they can get out of harm's way. Because the folks that normally live in these areas are, one, not from here, and so there's land ownership issues. They cannot just simply pick up and move inward, and also there are people that are not of good income standing, so they don't really have the resources and means to relocate. And the problem with this area is you got kind of 3 factors going against them. Because they're built on essentially what is mud, where mangroves live, over time the buildings shrink. Then the second compounding factor is that they're experiencing sea level rise. And then the third compounding factor is because they're on the bottom of a slope, when it rains heavy, they then have water coming from up the hill coming down to their homes. So it's really an unfortunate situation for them at this point. This is another village also located in a mangrove area. And this person had no choice, and I'll press play here so you can see, but to drive their car out of their little village roadway, but partially submerged underwater. This is the end of the boat ramp here. So if you didn't know the width of the road, you could literally fall down with your car. And I feel bad for them too, because I'm sure their cars are getting rusted as a result of the salt water getting into their car. Oops, sorry about that. Let me pause. Okay, then next. And if you recall that island that I showed that was devastated by the typhoon back in 2013 with the before and after photo. Just recently there was a typhoon a couple months ago. And we were fortunate enough that it wasn't during this high tide event that occurred on this day. It happened maybe about 2 weeks later. Otherwise, it could have been worse. But what had happened was, because it's an atoll island, the water table is pretty high, with the water coming in from the seaward side. And on top of that, we had really heavy rainfall. And it just so happened that it was high tide, so the water table was literally just below the surface of this area. And then on top of that, you had heavy rainfall, which added to the level of the water. And this is what happened as a result of it. This is one of the village roads. And as you can see, there's a gentleman there walking knee-high in the water. And because it's an atoll island, I think the highest point here is about maybe about 9 feet. And I would worry that if this had occurred, and then on top of that, a typhoon similar to the one that happened in November 13, in November of 2013, where the entire island was inundated even though the water was low tide. I can only imagine if the water was high tide, and on top of that, you had heavy rainfall. Just the utter devastation could be pretty bad. So these are some of the issues that are currently being faced in Palau. I think the next slide is just to thank you, everybody, for your time to spend with us this evening. So from this assessment, our office work as at the policy level. So we are now developing and working with state governments to identify areas of risk using really high resolution mapping tools, so that you can get more localized inundation maps for, I guess, making better informed decision on how best to deal with them. In some instances, you might look into gradual retreat. Some might be more of a hybrid approach, like what Akio had mentioned in his presentation, where you would have a combination of vegetation and some kind of hard engineer measure put in place. And in some instances, maybe one or the other, depending on the context. What we're advising from our offices, if it's a highly built environment, then maybe the hard measure is the appropriate one to approach to use to mitigate the inundation challenges. In areas where there's semi-development, maybe a little bit of both, but then really then protect as much as possible the mangrove areas, because they seem to demonstrate that they've been a really good natural barrier, particularly for storm weather events. They help the force dissipate the force of the energy coming from the strong waves that are derived from typhoons and cyclones. I think that's about it from this point. I appreciate your time and getting a bit of insight on our situation here. I'm happy to have a dialogue and answer any questions if you have any. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Abai, for presentation. I have a lot of questions and topic for with this for a discussion, but Tak, what do you think? Should we start? Continue to Shoko's presentation. Sorry, it's
Yeah,
on-
we can have a Shoko to present, and then maybe we can have a crosstalk. And if you have any for listeners, if you have any questions or any comments, please use the chat function, and you can write either if you are Japanese, and you can write in Japanese, and we can later on translate back
今
into
出てる人はランドスケープの。
okay.
Yeah, that's a great idea.
Yeah, so the Shoko, please continue on your presentation.
Sure. Thank you so much. So I have the task of commenting maybe on some of the great work and really valuable insights as to what's happening, you know, in Amami and in the Palau. So it's my great pleasure. Actually, so I must confess I am an urban planner and not a landscape architect. And I'm also from Yokohama, so I'm a city person rather than an islander. Well, islander in the context of Japan, but you know, not so much attuned to the issues of sea level rise as I was growing up. But I did have quite a journey till where I am right now with the World Bank, working on disaster risk management. You know, I studied a lot with a lot of tomodachis of landscape architects when I was in grad school, and then also through my work in Ghana and then also in the Pacific Islands, really learned a lot about, you know, working under and living very closely with nature and with culture, and really having a valuable, tight-knit, you know, sense of community and the value of natural resources in daily life. So I think some of the perspectives and comments that I tried to bring in, including to my work when we think about resilience and sea level rise, is really the product of all the lessons I've learned from the friends and teachers of these countries, particularly, I think, from the Pacific. So with that, I think some of the kind of key perspectives as a planner, I can try to bring into this conversation when we talk about resilience within the context of sea level rise. And this is really something, you know, I encountered a lot during some of the dialogues in the design processes and the implementation of projects related to sea level rise with, you know, a lot of our counterparts and friends in the Pacific region is, you know, this it's harder than you imagine to define the concept of an edge. So when we talk about sea level rise, and I think through the presentations, I think this was also raised, you know, about Mr. Irbar talking about, you know, with the typhoon and the cyclone, the coral reefs being devastated, which had a tremendous impact. So, you know, not maybe the end line of the land itself, but the coral reefs itself could be defined as, you know, an edge in some sense. And then also from what I understood, and I know that Palau is a bit different and from the context of this is more from an atoll island of Tuvalu, but the landscape itself, the land itself is a very moving and dynamic element, which is not really defined, across, the seasons, right? With king tides, the edges of the water changes, but also across the year. So defining where exactly to set the edge is really a key kind of issue to grapple with, especially if you're in a position like Mr. Irbai, when you're trying to plan for sea level rise protection work for a representative of a country. Also, if we look, what I also learned from many of the experiences from the Pacific is, and I imagine this would be similar to the context of Amami Islands and many of the island communities of Japan as well, the concept of like physical edge itself, also like humans do traditionally used to move around seasonally, and so even between the same geographies or same island community, and maybe this is also true for Japanese architecture too, you have different parts of your home area or estate or whatever, where you would spend your summer times versus your winter times or the dry season, cold season, and things like that. And that scale can expand across some specific location. And what we learn from many of the island communities in the Pacific, for example in Tuvalu or Marshalls, this was really back in the days, some of the lifestyles that they've had. So the process of maybe reimagining some of the edges in terms of the social and the lifestyle of a person, I think is also another interesting process to think about when we are starting to think about measures against sea level rise. Another kind of question I like to pose, and rather than answers, but is really when we talk about sea level rise strategies, what are we trying to protect? And maybe I could share also some of the work. From the Pacific, also from Tuvalu, but when we were working on some of the climate change adaptation projects, really we had a great opportunity to think about what are we trying to protect? What are we fighting for when we're trying to fight against climate change? And what are really the things through some of these actions that's very inherent to the life and the identity and the culture of each community? So with that seawall or with that mangrove forest, what are we really trying to protect? And I think this also came up in some of the discussions and stories shared by both Mr. Ibar and Kiyohito-san, because I understand that villa that is in Amami, really, it was really some of the key elements of that was really to protect the pandanas, which is an essential element of the Amami life, the sea turtles, the giant crabs or the coconut crabs, etc. And then also, I think Mr. Irbai also kind of mentioned about, some of the childhood experiences of, a family thing to go to the pool, etc. So I think it's really, when it comes down to these measures, it's also really important to really think about, what are we trying to, why are we doing this, and what are we trying to protect from sea level rise, and what is something that's irreplaceable versus something that could be transformed. So in many, I think, of these different types of efforts, and I think it's a little bit more theoretical than based on landscape design perhaps, but really, I think, and especially hearing from stories of Palau, etc., it's really difficult. I think the question is no longer in many cases what to change and what to protect, or change or protect. In many cases, you already have to make it, the changes already have happening, right? And so I think it's really the act of changing to protect, and what are the different ways in which landscape types of approaches could be utilized to enable this. And it's very interesting to hear Mr. Ibai talk about gradual retreat. That is part of some of the solutions that people of Palau are already considering. And then so for those discussions, really trying to define what through that maybe geophysical change that could potentially happen, what could be protected. And I think that's why, some of the solutions that landscape architects can offer through some of the approaches such as, green infrastructure, nature-based solution, etc., that are more flexible, multifunctional, modular, adaptable, etc., can really be drawn upon to enable and really think about what are some of those solutions. So I'll stop there. Thank you. Is that okay?
Thank you,
Is that too short?
Shoko.
Is that too short?
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll think about what the edge of protecting. Like, I protect my memories, right? When a child, I played sand beach and dive into the ocean and the sea. I'll find the coral reefs and find creatures. Yeah, I protect. Yeah, I'm a landscape architect to protect my memories. Thank you, thank you. Tak, that's wonderful, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was great. I found we just happened to have the Elbai Matsutaro-san as the policy making side. He's very closer to the government, and Shoko is I would say the planner, and Kyo is the designer or landscape architect. So I could see that like 3 different scale or how to approach to this the big topic, and we did not expect to have a complete answer today, but we just it was more than something that I imagined, and it was very interesting to get the 3 different sort of perspectives. And so I think Miki started to the question. So why don't we start questioning and commenting and try to use this next, approximately like 40 minutes to really have the cross talking. And the purpose of this talk is not to just like listen to the speakers quietly. I think I want people to be more like active to get to know others. Mostly like Japanese participants are dominant tonight because of us, 3 of us are Japanese, but I think it's good to know who is participating, what they are thinking, and I think what their thoughts are, and try to like reflect each other. Soもし日本のご参加の皆様で日本語でコメントしたりとかもし質問があればですねそれもこちらで訳したりしながら話せればと思いますので、ぜひお気軽にコメントいただければと思います。Okay, so why don't we start with Miki to question?
Miki, please introduce yourself first.
Hi, so my name is Miki Mitsuta. I'm a member of Tomodachi project. I worked with Takano-san very closely. Hi, Matsutaro-san. So I have a question to you regarding the situation in Palau. As I wrote here, could you elaborate a bit more on activities of people deal with such difficult situations? Because the other day I heard from WWF, they are running a project called Blue Pacific Project, and for example they started propagating the coral reef. And also because I'm talking about the situation, their project in Fiji, Solomon Islands, or Vanuatu, so it's neighboring countries to you, I guess. And because they lost the 70% 80% of fish industry. So they started harvesting seaweed, mud crabs, and mangrove oysters by the member of communities. And so now I'd like to know a bit more about your community activities to deal with this situation.
Thank you very much for your question. Yeah, so Palau is some of the adaptation measures and research that are ongoing. One that's similar to the one that you mentioned about coral propagation. There's an area in Nico, it's an area called Nico Bay. It's an area where there's higher level of acidity, and they found to be quite resilient to coral bleaching. And so what they're looking to do is to see if they can take some of those corals and then replant them elsewhere. And that is really just to help, the idea is to help restore corals that have been bleached, 1, and 2, hopefully populate areas with coral reef breeds that are resistant to bleaching. So that's one of the ongoing research that is being conducted by a research institution called PICRIT, Palau International Coral Reef Research Center is the name of it. And they have a wealth of research information that are published if you guys are ever interested in looking into it. In terms of fishing, you know, we've been fortunate because the fish, they just did a latest assessment, and there's been the fishes have been recovering in number, but I think it's probably because of less activities and numbers of people in the water fishing, and we have our tourism industry. That's basically our #1 industry here, where we receive up to 120,000 people at its peak. And, you know, which doesn't sound like a lot, but we're a population of 20,000 people. And so with that volume of number of people, I think caused a little bit of stress on the marine ecosystem. So since the COVID-19 hit and there's been travel restrictions imposed, we've seen a rebounding of fish stocks and fish numbers. So I guess it depends on the context. In light of climate change, what we see more of impacts from are inundation and severe weather events. But haven't quite seen the evidence of depletion of fish stocks as a result of it. Not yet, at least. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah. Thank you. I guess it's a time to take all possible actions simultaneously. So the community should work to prevent or to support themselves, as well as you mentioned, by zoning, rezoning, people probably could move up higher ground, and also the international landscape architects, you know, everyone in this profession should work towards the mitigation and adaptation of the climate change. So lots of items is on the table, I guess. Anyway, thank you for your presentation.
You're most welcome. Thank you for your question.
If there are any other questions, well, thank you, Miki. And if there's any question, please, you can use the raising hand function, or you can simply just write down in the chatting room. And while waiting for others, I have a question to Elbai-san as well. And as a government officer, I think you mentioned that you are currently working on assessing all the possible risks, including inundation and climate change caused by climate change. And I would like to ask, so as a policy making side or research side, I think you can assess the risk and identify, and you can try to reach out to maybe the planning or zoning side. But when it comes to like people's, the places and the implementation at the life level, I think you need some kind of like a missing thing that you cannot reach out from the government side. Or are you trying to, I don't know how much like deeper or how much can you possibly do at the government level? Because usually there's a huge gap between what government policy does, and we landscape architects often work with based on a place or site, or maybe a little bit bigger like a district. But often we were taught that we are capable of doing a lot of the natural based solutions or land use and planning. But in fact, in Japan, we often are given like to design a park or plaza, but not really this huge sort of a high impact level of site planning or higher level the planning. So I'm just wondering, what's your sort of a next step after identifying all the risks, and what are you trying to do? And maybe if you are doing something with the IFLA or KIO already, could you please talk about it?
Sure, no problem. For planning purposes, we currently use the Palau climate change policy that was adopted a few years back, 2015. We are now working on updating it. And from that, it identifies 10 sectors at risk from these climate indicators, the same indicators that were presented on this presentation. And from there, it identified specific agencies that were then made to become the lead agency to coordinate efforts. And this group became the National Climate Change Coordination Committee. And then that consists of the committee from agencies that are relevant for that specific sector. But of course, because climate change is cross-cutting, other agencies are within that sector as well. And that lead person is a committee member. And then within that particular sector, you have the working group. And that's our way of reaching out further, because we wouldn't be able to do it on our own. And a lot of these agencies are also implementing agencies. So they work directly with the community. So they're basically our conduit. So what normally does happen is that through their reports, we would get information from them through consultations. We get a feel of what are some of the needs are. And then we're also kind of a conduit to the international community. And so for example, we have networks of potential donor support, if that's the support that's needed, or technical support. We would then try and match that support to the need on the ground. Now, it's not a clear 9 for sure. It's quite organic, and it's I think there's a lot of more work that's still to be had, but the essential functions that makes this mechanism is already in place. It's really now just trying to make it more effective and more efficient. Does that answer your question, Taka?
Yes, I think you answered the question. And then I think still a lot of countries, don't know how to approach to the climate change adaptation, and we just all started, and maybe it's more visible in your country about what you're doing and all the things. So I think we can definitely learn from that. Thank you. And I think Shoko has a question to everybody.
Yes, I'm not sure if I'm allowed to ask questions, but I might as well. So I was very interested to hear, when we talk about sea level rise and climate change, it's about planning for future generations of, for in your case, Palauans. So I'm wondering what the role of culture and youth are in trying to think about strategies against sea level rise, both formally but also perhaps informally. And then also, are you trying new approaches to really think about those elements, which I believe are quite important when you talk about what to protect for the future against sea level rise. So yeah, I'd like to hear if you had any thoughts on that.
Yes, unfortunately, that's the area where we need to actually work more in terms of direct engagement, the engagement with the youth specifically. And I guess you can combine it with cultural sort of related to our culture and engaged in the combination of youth and culture. There's an organization that's quite active in that regard. It's called Abil Society. That's EBIIL. They are kind of one of the key agencies that work directly with specifically with kids, actually, and to ensure that cultural values are still instilled, because with modernization, there's always this competition of, do you move on to more to ideologies that are more, for example, westernized? What are some of but in doing so, striking a balance by still maintaining your roots and culture. And it's an environmental organization as well that have dove into climate change related matters. And because they focus on kids, they kind of have been instrumental in really ensuring that the kids are engaged. That being said, I'll just be honest, it's one of our weaknesses that we need to strengthen. I think the only thing that our office is involved in, to some extent, although I wouldn't say directly, is that within the National Climate Change Coordination Committee, the Ministry of Education is the lead ministry for our educational sector. And so with that, we've worked with them to integrate climate change science into the academic curriculum, at least for the public institutions.
Yeah, thank you very much for sharing. And I think at the World Bank, we're no different in terms of our weaknesses, in terms of engaging more, the social elements, cultural, young people. We often find ourselves, with just the usual suspects when we're talking about these issues. So definitely, learning from the landscape architecture community, I think on that front, as well as associated organizations, something us at the World Bank would also be quite interested in learning more. So thank you so much for sharing that.
Thank you, Shoko. And I think there's a Nappy in participating tonight from Philippines.
I have found Nappy from Philippines.
Yep. If you have
welcome.
any questions or comments.
Well,
Hi, Nappy.
yeah, hi. Hello everyone. Well, unfortunately, I didn't get to hear a lot of the discussions previously, but I attended this meeting because the topic is something that is very close to our experience as a archipelagic nation, just like I think that's like Palau and to a certain extent Japan. But I think there are other underlying factors that affect our adaptation to sea level rise, mainly because of course the aside from the physical, the physical feature of our country, there are certain social, economic, and political factors that affect how we could, develop strategies in terms of, our programs to adapt to sea level rise. For example, the high number of, for example, informal settlers or the unassisted fisher folks who are living in coastal communities are mostly affected, and they don't have much option in terms of moving, for example, further inland where they might, where the effect of climate of sea level rise might be minimized, or even say coming up with certain, like say, infrastructure that could mitigate the effects of sea level rise. So what we see now mostly are very incremental and to a certain extent very individualistic approach. So you would see, for example, houses that are building into multiple levels or floors, so that in case there's a storm surge or there is a or just the monsoon tidal changes, they could move to other floors, or in much poorer communities they would build their structures on stilts. So those are very, I would say, incremental and very short-sighted kind of adaptation, and the government hasn't really gave concrete plans in terms of how we could adapt to that. Of course, they would have. I mean, we have heard of a lot of, say LGUs having their own land use plan, designating especially coastal zones as no built areas or no houses should be built on it. But we haven't really addressed the issue of housing for affordable housing or equitable housing for everyone. I think that's very important, and because many of the communities living along coastal areas are dependent on their livelihood, and we haven't really heard of that one. And I think there are other factors that continue to exacerbate the effects of climate change. For example, liquefaction. As we build more areas, many of that might end up with being penetrated by seawater. And same goes with, say, our agricultural land. Wherein, with the sea level rise, more land becomes submerged, or even the aquifers become flooded with salt water, and with it would affect the fertility of the soil. So I am not really sure, but I would say that we are not so ready yet in terms of our approach as a country. We know the concepts. On how this would affect the overall ecosystem, livelihood, and even communities. We have communities that have submerged totally with just few centimeter rise. We have communities now here in the National Capital Region that are all year submerged. They're flooded. So, and that's because of the sea level rise, And yeah, so I think what I'm hearing now, for example, in terms of mitigating the effects of sea level rise, like say um, um, encouraging, for example, coral growth, and I think the best effort that we have done so far is just expanding the mangrove areas, and I think that's the most popular solution that has been offered by our government. But beyond that, I'm sorry to say, but we haven't really been doing a lot concerning this issue. Thank you.
Thank you, Napi. I think I forgot to introduce that you're from the Philippines, because people may not know who you are. So Napi is one of the good landscape architect from Philippines. So I thank you for your comments, but I'm just wondering if, as the para or association of landscape architects, are you guys really trying to maybe just started discussing about in everyday practice? How are you committing to such situation? Are you giving advices? Are you working on the planning or implement some small projects to fit to climate change adaptation? Or how are you approaching to it?
Regarding that, the organization has been active in some projects where our assistance was asked by different communities. We, if you remember the 2013, was it Haiyan? We're in a big area, especially in the eastern part of the Philippines, was devastated by the typhoon and then the storm surge. We actually helped in the relocation sites of the different communities. We designed, for example, we designed a community for additional livelihood, because most of them are fisher folks, are into the fishing industry. So, but they were moved like kilometers away from the coast. So they had to find another source of livelihood. So that's where we come in. So we introduced, for example, and we train them to engage in, like, say, urban agriculture, and even some processing of their agricultural products. That's one. And then, of course, there's another thing, like helping with creating a memorial for the victims of the storm surge. That's in Leyte. And another one is that we have this project which is we call Luntiang Po, or green communities. Most of the communities that we help here are relocatees from different effects of the typhoons. For example, one in Cagayan de Oro, huge flooding. In Bohol, it's because of that was an earthquake, sorry. And the other one here in Rizal, it's also another one that's in 2009 flooding. So these communities are moved, and that's where we would come into when our assistance has been requested. We would now train, for example, well, not train, but we would try to assist the community into creating a new sense of community, because we believe that in order to build resilience, we need to first capacitate the people, and for them to have a sense of being one, because them coming from different locations, usually they don't know their neighbors. They don't know the people living across their homes. So that's what we do. Initially, we try to create a new community with that. And then, of course, another one is to find a new source of livelihood for them. So usually we would ask during the workshop, we would ask them what do they know. Are they familiar with, like, say, common common plants that they could sell. They could that they could even process for, preserve, like pickles or something. So those things. And aside from that, we have been assisting some communities, very vulnerable communities, in terms of creating easements that with the projection, if ever storm surge or tidal or sea level rise would rise to a certain height. So mainly we would strongly suggest to the government, local government, to allot this as an open space, so that we could prevent people from building on these very vulnerable strips of lands along the coastal area. So that's it.
Very interesting. Thank you. I think the last thing you mentioned, you try to make the story closer to us. I think the open space along the coastal line is pretty important, and it's approachable for us, easily approachable for us, but it's very hard to determine the function. The mangrove, like the forest, sometimes it could be like a raised farm, or it could be wetlands. I think it just we cannot just simply adopt the solution to everywhere, but I think that's something that important to share. And then I think often we don't have an opportunity to really exchange this kind of topic at the usual meeting. So I think it was good that Erbe-san's the talk and Shoko's talk kind of started to bring a lot more questions and information. And I would like to ask who? Oh, Matsushima-san, are you here? Maybe he's not. No, maybe not here. Sorry. Sorry about that. I thought that maybe he's working on the beach restoration, and I thought it might be interesting to ask question, but I think he's probably gone by now. So and then I think there's a Manifa Lanuma from Bangladesh, I think. If you would like to introduce yourself, and then maybe if you have any comments or questions, please.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Fuku. I'm Manifa Renuma from Bangladesh, and currently I'm trying to practice landscape architecture, as we don't have this established practice over here, or it's not a recognized profession yet. Our architecture is very well established profession in Bangladesh. It's been here for last 50 years, but we don't have any educational training institute yet in Bangladesh. So we are having landscape trained architects from all over the world. Students from Bangladesh are going abroad and taking, like myself, I went to Malaysia and earned my degree. And also I am also the first individual member from Bangladesh of IFLA. And currently we were invited to the IFLA Council meeting of IFLA APR. So that's where I met all of you. And thank you for giving me the platform to talk about a bit about landscape practice over here. So as I was going through the presentation, sorry, I joined a bit late, as the timing is not same. We are in different time zone. But Bangladesh is also facing climate change, and there are so many projects going on here also by the government. The government has already taken initiative for next 100 years. We are improving the rivers over here. and they have taken the initiative. It's called Delta Plan, because Bangladesh is also another victim of climate change and the sea level rise. Even also, I participated in a seminar. It was jointly done by the Netherlands Embassy and Bangladesh government. So there it was, we brainstormed for 2 days that what we can do to mitigate this problem and what problems are going to be, what problems are going to arise. So we saw that people in Bangladesh, in the coastal area, people are displacing. They're losing their home habitats. And we have Sundarban, the biggest mangrove of world, on our southern coastal belt. So it's protecting right now, but only a few parts. But if the salinity rises, even 2.5 ppt, so we are going to face declination in, say, the Royal Bengal tiger. We might see declination in few of the species of the mangrove forest. So the government is taking initiative to plant more native plants and to go for more local solution. And also their polders, they are also offering to build some polders in the coastal areas where the farmers, especially the farmers, are affected in this country on the coastal zone. Because as the salinity is rising, our food, especially we are dependent on rice. So the paddy fields are extinct. They are about to extinct in those coastal areas as the salinity is rising. So I think for the climate change, even our, from the point of landscape view, I think we have way long to go. And we have we need much more research or background to establish that we need landscape profession here, not only engineering solution or architectural solution. Right now, we need this profession to establish and to help mitigate or build a resilient future for Bangladesh. Thank you.
Thank you, Manifa, for the very powerful message. I think actually I met only once, but I think it was wonderful getting to connect to you. And also, it was great to know that you have a Delta project and also similar discussion going on in Bangladesh. So I'd like to thank you. Manifa. So I'd like to ask you back, Shoko, as the World Bank officer. I often feel that there are a lot of good things that is sort of worked out by World Bank, but at the same time, I think it's very difficult to define the best localized solutions and try to meet with what they would like to have. So I'm always, having a discussion with you, but how can we landscape architect kind of like collaborate with World Bank possibly? We did a workshop, or we kind of partially like advocating law together with the Kyo and you in the past, but what can we possibly do? What will be the best sort of the way to work with you? I might be a bit of a difficult question, but I think I'm just wondering how are you going to answer these questions? So
sure, I could try. So I'm part of the World Bank group so the World Bank, you may know that we're an international organization where we have elements of our organization working with governments to support the government's access investment project in the forms oftentimes in loans to develop their infrastructure. We also have elements, which is where I'm part of, that's dedicated kind of technical assistance facilities. So where I'm part of is called the Global Facility for Disaster Reduction and Recovery, GFDRR. And within that, we have a very specific program that focuses on resilience financed by the government of Japan. So what we support is when, you know, for example, government of Bangladesh is working, have requested to access World Bank loans to invest in, you know, say an economic zone development. But then they've asked us to try to help the government do it in a green and resilient way. Then, you know, we can help connect with, you know, grant resources, try to provide technical assistance to do that. And, you know, that could be involve both international, but also local, you know, expertise working on this topic. You know, what is being done in Bangladesh, you know, what are some of the available approaches out there, you know, to really think about whether and how this could be done differently. So as part of that process, given that this Japan program for disaster risk management focus is financed by the government of Japan, there's of course preference or encouragement. The government of Japan, you know, would also like to see Japanese experts engaged in this process as well. So through that, you know, if there's a request from the government, we can always try to support facilitating that through our program as well. So that's kind of the step-by-step, I guess, way in which we operate. But again, you know, I think this is true for all international organizations that are in the public domain. You know, we serve the governments of you know, our client countries when it's the World Bank, but like, you know, our partner countries when it's the UN, but like, we're here for those countries. So we cannot really do anything that's not of their request. So that's kind of, you know, when it comes to very specific in-country engagement, that's just the objective of the mandate of our organization. However, you know, we do receive requests, and unfortunately, it has not come to fruit yet. But I think we did receive a very kind contact from Mr. Irbai, you know, a few months back about, you know, he kindly, probably through Kyo, he had a, you know, look through this mini studio handbook and then kindly reached out to us to see if something like that could be done in Palau. So if it's definitely, you know, these are some of the things we look forward to supporting. But again, you know, we want to make sure that that's something that's requested by the government that we serve.
Thank you, Shoko. I think it was very clear about what World Bank does, and I think it's important that the government is trying to sort of whatever the organization is like put together and try to like request what their needs are and try to like reach out. I guess that's the first step. And then I think we can do a lot of things like workshop or small like a school or the model studies or whatever. But I think the first step was very clear to share. But if you have any question, I think we can, you know, in the future work out for today's participants. And I would like to bring Mike back to Kyo and Matsutaro-san and to the last notes, because today's talk started with sort of a friendship between you and Kyo and Tomodachi. You know, Takano-san's, he's maybe watching us in heaven today, but he's maybe very excited to know this is happening. But I think we shouldn't just, you know, stop this as a talk, and I would like to ask Kyo and the Matsutaro-san about the future plans and what we can possibly do together as a Tomodachi. So please, Kyo.
Yeah, every time I meet Tomodachi countries people, and I call the Shoko and to support us, and she always helps us a lot. And also the Mr. Abai-san too, and the Bangladesh, Liliana was a contact person to Shoko, and maybe we can, I'm very happy to have you here tonight and give us a more hint to collaborate with the other countries. And actually, I have many comments for the participants and then you, Shoko and Mr. Abai, but you know, the future for the future sessions, actually the Yuta Masakane is next generation of landscape architects. So I'll pass my mic to Yuta to speak. So Yuta, come on. Actually, we are planning to have a next talk session for the EAA, right? In young generation talk, and we also have we'll also continue to Tomodachi project other talk sessions, and also I would like to take action for landscape for Palau too, because we are problem solvers, so we need action, right? So yeah, we do.
I got a message from Yuta that he's on train, like listening.
Okay,
so he cannot speak in his
yeah, he lives in
train.
Yokohama.
Yeah.
So you can easily meet Shoko, maybe. Actually, yeah. Thank you for everyone and every presentation from Shoko, Mr. Abai, and Tak. Thank you very much. Whoa. I'll pass my mic to Mr. Abai. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Kyo. Just to make sure I answer properly, can you just repeat the question one more time?
Oh, my question.
Yes.
Yeah, I think that well, I think people are wondering, or maybe I was personally wondering what's the next steps are, because Kyo and you and Takano-san started contacting each other, and I think maybe there was like a first sort of a like discussion, and then now you're trying to implement the policies at the higher government level. But if you have any message to, I think tonight's session, maybe 80% of landscape architects listening to this. So if you have any messages, or if you would like to, I don't know, to enhance the Tomodachi strategies, or how can we possibly like help you guys, or how can we work together, or like, I don't know, what can we do for the next steps. So maybe Kyo and you are continue working on this Palau issues, but I think what to expect, or what if you have the message to the listener audience today, that'd be great.
Yeah, no, we're happy to collaborate. And while I work at the national government level, Palau is so small, we end up kind of doing a little bit of everything, and we're fortunate enough that sometimes we actually do on-the-ground projects. And one of which is the project that we've been involved in is called Complete Streets, integrating sidewalks, bicycle lanes into the existing road design. And then, where the landscaping architecture could potentially come in is maybe the beautification and help with the functionality of these streetscapes that we're looking to redesign, particularly in light of climate change, with projections of increased rainfall, looking for methods to avoid future flooding, and maybe even capture some of the water into some kind of water reservoir. And Kyo-san was been gracious enough to give us some conceptual designs, which is great for long-term planning. At this stage, we're actually just catching up on the idea of developing the interest of the community on the value of having road systems designed in a way that is multimodal. So allowing for space, safe and secure space for walkers and bicyclists. Mainly because much of our road systems are auto-centric. They're made essentially for drivers. So we're slowly but surely making these really simple changes. First, by putting in vertical delineators to separate the walkers from drivers, and to show them that this particular pathway is basically essentially your safe zone where you can walk safely. And I think that's by increasing the safety for pedestrians, then it'll in the long run leave room to more permanent structures that can be put in place, so that the streets are more walkable and bicycle friendly. Our downtown area is 1.5 miles. It's a small, very walkable area in terms of distance wise, and yet we have really heavy traffic. So there's no reason in practical terms why there should be traffic jams if only we redesign the road systems and potentially do a little bit more urban planning by maybe adopting building codes, so that it becomes a mandatory that for every building that's built or for renovations that occurs, that you make a safe walking space on the frontage of your building facility. Those are things in the long term that we're looking for, and then hopefully integrating the climate change lens into it as part of the package. So I guess so this idea came to be, and we got connected to Shoko, and I had emailed her about it, and this workshop would have been really good to as a starting point. But however, this is a bit of an inside scoop here. Our director, he's number 2 guy, is the focal point for the World Bank. You might know him, Shoko. His name is Darren Fritz. And the reason, and I'm sorry, I should have emailed you back, but the reason why I was reluctant to email back was I was advised that Palau is considered a graduated country. And so there was concern that the support that come our way, there would be potential implications that it would come in the form of loans. And because of the COVID-19 situation and budget constraints, our government wanted to avoid going down that route. So that being said, it's still an important need, and we're willing to look at various options to see where we can collaborate. Thank you.
Thank you, Eva-san. So yeah, I think it was only just 2 hours, but it was very, to me, it was very exciting starting lecture from Kyo and Amami Island, and then it stepped into the Airbase's Palau and travel back to the Shoko's presentation. To me, it was not really the coordinated before, but it happened to be somewhat coordinated. So to me, it was most interesting discovery tonight. But I would like to give my mic back to Kyo to close tonight's crosstalk.
Oh yeah.
So thank you.
Okay. Yeah. If anybody interested in join this team, Landscape Architects Without Border team, we're problem solvers, and we will take action to the
Oh no, he's gone. No?
Sorry,
Oh,
my
no,
my
he's
my
back.
PCs. Sorry. So will take action. So we now have a Mickey and Chio only. So we need more people to support the Tomodachi countries. Hopefully that with together with the World Bank. So thank you very much for all, and let's take a picture.
Yeah, and then how can they like reach you if they would like to participate landscape architects without border? Like did they like personally send your email or?
Oh yes, please. Yeah, and call me.
Yeah,
And
but this,
yeah, please email me. I will.
you can write email
Yeah,
here, or
yeah.
you can later on.
Yeah, email here. Yeah, yeah, on the chat.
Okay.
This is not personal, so it's okay. Please send the email if you want to join. Yeah. And actually, we got a lot of assignment from Mr. Abai. I have a bunch of assignments, so maybe we can do together, step by step. Yeah, thank you very much. And let's take a picture, Tak.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
And for the
Space
audience
off.
tonight, thank you for participating. And if you're okay to show your face, could you please turn on your mic? And I would we would like to take pictures. Hold on.
Yeah.
もし、大丈夫でしたら、
Sato is here.
マイクをオンにしていただいて。
いいデザイン。
マイクじゃない、ごめんなさい。カメラをオンにしていただいて、写真を撮りたいと思います。
イェーイ。
いいですかね。もうちょっと待ちますか。
おお。いいですね。
田中さん。
田中さん来ました。へい。
大丈夫ですかね。
Yep. 西山さん。一ノ瀬さん。Yeah.
Okay, so今からlet's take a picture. So I'll just go like 1, 2, 3 and I take shot.
Oh yes.
Okay, so 1, 2, 3.
This is the pose of landscaper.
And I'll move on to the next page. So one more time. So
yes,
1, 2,
landscape.
Okay, so thank you everyone for participating tonight, and I will let you know when the next session is. I think it most likely around the mid or the end of October. And next time, the younger generation, 20s, early 20s, and many folks in Asia and Pacific region will participate. So it'll be very different from this time. So please look for
not very different. Talk.
Well, it will be different, I guess.
On?
Everything is different. So
yeah.
Anyway,
okay.
So thank you very much for participating tonight. And I recorded tonight's session, so we will make this available on IFLA APR website after editing. So thank you everyone for participating and tonight, and see you next time.
Thank you. Bye
Thank
bye.
you.
Bye.
Bye.
Take care, everybody.
Thank you. Bye bye, Choco.
Bye.
Bye bye. Money for